My name is Debbie Jordan Kauble. Some of you might know me as Kathy Davis from Bud Hopkins' book Intruders. Probably not. I mean, it's been a long time, but I've had a weird life. I'm, been around for a while, and it seems like ever since I was a little kid, I've had strange things happen to me. And for a long time, I thought it was normal. I thought everybody just had these little weird things happen to them and their family. It wasn't until I got to school and started telling people about it that I realized I probably shouldn't be telling people about this stuff because I don't think it's that normal. Nothing was as dramatic as the incident that sparked Intruders. That happened on June the 30th, 1983. It was one of those dates it's one of those things that when something huge happens, it sticks in your head and you always remember. That date is like that for me. I had what I thought were dreams previous to that time, like when I was 17 and just recently had gotten married. I thought I had a dream where these two guys, I call them, they looked like kids like the typical gray now. Big black eyes, big heads. They had on black suits, or they had on black clothes, one-piece suit. And they came into my bedroom in this dream. I couldn't move. I woke up, they were standing there. I saw them come in, fade in. They walked towards my side of the bed. My husband was in bed with me, and he was out like a light. And and anyway, they came towards me, and I remember my first thought was panic. I thought, oh my God, don't touch me. If you just don't come any closer to me, I'll be all right. And they handed me a black box, about the size of a shoebox, had a red circle on it, or red light in it somehow. And I asked them what it was, because I calmed down when they made contact with me in the box. I calmed down, and I asked them what it was, and they said when I saw it again, I would know what it was for and how to use it. I asked if I could keep it, and they said no. And then they glided back away from me. They got bright and wavy and kind of translucent and skinnier and skinnier and skinnier until they popped like a little flash bulb, and they were gone. Well, the next morning when I woke up, I remembered it, and I told my husband about the dream, and he wanted to know what I had for dinner the night before. And he's like, that was crazy. I said, yeah, I know, it was a weird dream, wasn't it? So I've always just thought of it as a dream. I can't guarantee it wasn't, but based on other things that happened in my life after that, I'm kind of wondering about that dream thing. The Intruders, the incident that triggered the Intruders book, that got me in contact with Bud Hopkins, who wrote the book, was I was a single mom living with my parents. At the time, I had two little boys, was helping a neighbor who was a seamstress cut out patterns for extra money, and had gone to her house to do it, to work on the patterns that night. And then when I got there, my mom called me and had me come home because she saw something weird in the yard. It was a week later, she tells me, I remember why I called you to come home. I'd seen this ball of light around the bird feeder. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me then? I wouldn't, maybe not have come home, but I would have. So anyway, I came home. I went out back of the house looking around to see if I could see intruders. And I don't mean aliens, I mean burglars, just, people. I wasn't thinking about aliens and UFOs and stuff. I was thinking about prowlers. I had picked up my dad's empty shotgun out of the Florida room before I went back to look around. Told my mom. She's like, that's not loaded. I said, I I know that, but I can get close enough to them that I can hit them with it before they realize there's nothing in it. So, didn't see anything in the back. Saw that the pump house light that I had seen on earlier was now off. Saw that the pedestrian door to the garage attached to the house was now open. So I immediately thought, oh, my dog must be out. So I was looking for her, and she was under my dad's panel or my ladder truck. But she wouldn't come back. She wouldn't come out. She was just crying and stuff. So I just left her. I checked the pump house. Didn't see anything. Didn't see anything in the yard. Went into the garage. And when I was in the garage, all of a sudden I felt like I was on fire. It felt like every molecule of my body was vibrating and burning. And I thought, oh my God, I got to get out of here. And I turned to go out the garage door. And I was hit in the chest, well, here, by something that in my mind I thought it felt like, only thing I can imagine what being hit by lightning would feel like. Started here, and the light was so bright and intense, and I know my eyes were closed, but I could still see it. And I could feel every body, my limb, everything, every molecule of my being was vibrating. And I know it couldn't have lasted but a few seconds because I wouldn't be able to survive it, but...
What color was the light?
The light was intense white, like I have never seen in my life. It's white. Thank you for asking. And it hit me. I couldn't move. It lit up, and the brightness dimmed. The vibrating stopped, but I couldn't move. And I was standing. At some point, I went from the doorway out onto the cement patio in front of me. And I felt something pull on the back of my shoulder, pull down, and I felt a burning sensation in my ear. And in my mind, it visualized, it felt like a hot knitting needle stick in my head, in my ear. And I heard a disembodied voice. I didn't see anybody around talking to me, but I heard this voice that I couldn't say whether it was male or even female. It could have been either. And it said it was unfortunate that I had felt this pain. So I got the impression I felt that this was an unintentional side effect of whatever they did. And then at some point I felt, I looked out in front of me, and maybe 20 feet in front of me, there was a ball of light about the size of a basketball. And it was about as high up off the ground as I am tall. I'm 5'3". And it went down really slow to the ground, and then it went right back up where it was. And I felt like it was looking at me. I felt that it was looking at me. And I could see movement off in this direction, in the yard. Now my eyes were blasted from this light, and I was real splotchy vision, kind of like when you get your picture taken and that flash is so bright, it leaves those spots in your vision. And it was darker outside at this point. But I saw movement, and it looked like little kids in the yard, 6 of them. They kind of were in all areas of this larger backyard, and they all kind of came together and then just kind of glided down towards me, but off to an angle. And at that point, I saw this thing. I didn't want to look at it, but I didn't want to not look at it because I didn't want it to come near me, but I didn't want to, I wanted to see where it was from me at all times. It was like terror I can't even explain to you. And in retrospect, Bud called it a craft or a ship. Other people have called it that for 35 years. But I don't know how those 6 dudes went anywhere in this little thing. It would be like trying to cram 6 8-year-olds into one of those little plastic cars that kids ride around in. I mean, it just didn't make sense now. I didn't think about it then. This thing was shaped like an egg. It had another white ball of light on the side of it, about halfway across the middle of it. It was wider in the middle and smaller at the bottom. It was probably about 10 feet tall, because it wasn't much bigger than the pump house next to the swimming pool. And it almost didn't look like it was even touching the ground. It was hard to tell. It almost had a slight bobble to it, like a bobber on a calm lake. And it had this look around the bottom of it, kind of like you're looking at something through the heat of a fire, kind of wavy, just like those guys looked before they got skinny and popped out. Anyway, and if I remember correctly, there was like skinny protrusions off of the sides of it, like legs, but I don't know that they were even actually touching anything. To this day, I only probably remember about 10 minutes of that night. And it was determined by Bud afterwards that apparently from the time I went out to look for burglars until the time that I called my friend and said, I don't feel like sewing anymore, you want to swim, was about an hour and a half. And the funny part is they didn't even question. Across, one street back where I was supposed to be, they didn't even question how I was gone so long until later, and they realized that this time had passed. That night, after whatever happened to me happened, and I'm standing on the cement, I hear my name. It was like a week later, so we figured out that that was actually my mom had called my name out the back kitchen door. And when I heard my name, it was like somebody snapped their fingers. And I woke up. And whatever I just, had remembered seeing was gone. I just was, it was like it just went yanked out of my mind. I remember walking up the back of the lower patio as a tri-level, up the little steps to the porch where Mom was in the kitchen. And she says to me, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, it's cool. But all the time I'm thinking, I feel gross. I feel weird, dirty. I need to get wet. That's when I called Deanna and I said, hey, I'm not really feeling like sewing. You guys want to go swim? Because they had a cement pond in the backyard. And it was, it was end of June. So she's like, yeah, sure, I'll bring, she brought her daughter over. So about 10 minutes they showed up. We're walking across the backyard towards the swimming pool. Well, none of us has on shoes. And her daughter walks across an area in the back and she starts hopping around. Ow. She thought she'd stepped on bees. Her feet stung. And so we looked and got to the pool. We didn't see anything. There wasn't any stingers in her feet or anything. And she eventually started complaining of her feet feeling numb, and it was kind of going up her legs a little bit, but it wasn't enough to keep us out of the pool. And apparently, I don't know, Deanna thought her daughter was a little dramatic for, 12-year-olds. So we didn't see anything, and she seemed okay. We got in the pool. And with a couple of minutes, everybody got nauseated, really queasy. My eyes started getting messed up. Where, when you're a kid, did you ever stick your head under the water in the swimming pool and open your eyes a bunch of times, and then if chlorine makes everything have halos around? My eyes started doing that, bad, and I got a bad headache. So they left, and I went home, went back in the house, went to bed. And when I woke up the next morning, my eyes were swelled, completely shut. I was in so much pain, and I couldn't open my eyes. So my mom took me to the emergency room, and there happened to be a doctor there that specialized in eyes, but he had her take me across the street to his office because he had more equipment there that he could see better. And the first thing he said to me when he looked in my eyes was, have you looked into the arc of a welder's torch? And I'm like, no. and I can't even tell him what happened the night before because I didn't remember. At this point, I didn't remember the light or any of that. So, a few weeks later, a bunch of creams and eye drops. They finally healed, but my eyes have never been the same. I've had to have lenses replaced already in my eyeballs, and I have macular degeneration. My vision's been crappy since that night. And I blame that night, but I can't prove it. After that night, the mark in the yard appeared. It was a round circle, about 8 feet in diameter, perfect. Had a streak that came off the side of it, was 49 feet long, ended in a perfect arc. All the grass inside of it was dead, laid over, grayish brown. Funny thing was that the animals in the yard and even the dog walked around it. They would not walk on it. And snow melted off of it for a couple of years. Every time it snowed, the snow would melt off in this area. And it took about 5 years for the grass to really heal and grow back. When it first started coming back, it was real thick and almost a purplish green. It was a dark, different color and texture than the grass in the rest of the yard. The tomato plants that we had by the swimming pool grew. The vines were as big around as my arms, and the tomatoes were this big, but you couldn't eat them because they were so acidic that they would peel the skin off your lips. Mm-hmm. There was a swath. The whole area had trees across it. And there was a swath about 8 or 10 feet wide on these trees, from the ground to the foliage all the way up, that within days withered and turned yellow, and they all fell off long before fall came. And we found out later that my dad had a 100-foot tower antenna in that area. He was a ham radio operator. And the wiring that ran from the tower, he hadn't used it for quite a while, and the wiring that ran from the tower to the house, the wires, and it was in pretty close proximity of where this mark in the yard was, and this thing was in the yard. The metal inside the wires had all melted together. Inside the plastic had all melted together. Daddy didn't find that till several months later, though. And as soon as I saw the mark in the yard for the first time, I saw those black eyes, that big black liquidy eyes that looked through you. And it was from that point on, for that whole year, I think I had a nervous breakdown, because I'd have nightmares. I couldn't sleep during the day. I mean, I couldn't sleep at night. I could only sleep during the day when other people were up and the sun was out. And at night I would sit in the chair between my kid's bed and just wait. For what? I don't know. I couldn't go to the bathroom, in the upstairs bathroom, because that window overlooked that mark in the yard, and I couldn't make myself go in there at night. I felt like I was going to get yanked out of the window. All kinds of paranormal stuff started happening in the house. We had like thousands of bees that showed up in the boys' bedroom one day. Lethargic bees. We could sweep them up with the shop vac. But they were thousands. And the windows were painted shut. And there was no attic door in that room. So how those bees got in there, we don't know. Just weird stuff like that. A big amber ashtray split in half right in front of me and my sister and my mom. And one end slid to one side of the table, one end slid to the other, and all the cigarette butts set in the middle on the table. All I did was take my hand and go to flip my cigarette, and as soon as I did that, that ashtray popped. Just weird stuff started happening to me. I helped my older sisters clean Mom's brass handles on we refinished the cabinets for them for their anniversary present, and my job was to refix the handles, and I was rubbing them, and they started bending brass handles when I was rubbing on them. I met strange people during that time, and at that time I wrote a letter to Bud Hopkins. He had written a book called Missing Time, and I got his address out of the back of that book, and I wrote him a letter because I was desperate. I thought something crazy is happening here, and I don't know what to do. Maybe this guy can help me, because he seems to have worked on this stuff before, and he didn't. So I wrote him a letter. And actually, I told him more about my older sister had a UFO sighting and experience in 1965 that she told the family about a lot. And so I kind of told him about her without her permission, and she wasn't happy. I kind of threw her under the bus, because my last page of the 8-page letter was like, oh, by the way, this happened in July, and here's some pictures. What do you think this is? And am I crazy? And why do I feel like something's getting ready to happen and they're coming back, He wrote me, or he called probably 2 months after Mom mailed the letter, or a month or so. And in the meantime, my dog, who'd been out there with me that night, had to be put to sleep. All of her hair fell out. She had big black spots on her back. Her teeth fell out. Her eyes whited over. She got real skinny, couldn't eat. She seemed like she was deaf. I mean, she's real quickly went downhill. And so we put her asleep I think it was in October of that year. I got sick. My glands in my neck swelled up. My hair got thin. My fingernails, some of them still have the wavy lines on them, even after 30 years. Every bug that came through town, I got sick. I had no immune system. I developed a bunch of irregular heartbeats and panic attacks and just all kinds of crazy stuff and all these dreams. In the middle of all of it, I dreamed. I remembered I had a dream. I call it a dream of seeing a girl, seeing those gray eyes, and being in a place where they were. And I don't remember how I got there or how I got home. But while there, they brought this kid out to me, this little girl, and they were the one that. The communication I had with these wasn't speaking. It was, I felt things and I saw things, and I had to use my vocabulary to put my words to understand this. It wasn't like just talking. It wasn't even like hearing words. It was like, it's almost like they made you be them for a minute so that you felt this and understood it. And I got the impression that this guy was surprised that I didn't seem happy to see this kid, or, that I wasn't happy that I couldn't take her with me. At the point, as soon as I looked at her, I thought, oh my God, that's mine. And I know all this sounds crazy, and I didn't want to tell Bud about it when I did. And I didn't even understand why I felt the connection between having lost a baby and this. But apparently after I told him about it and he started talking about it in conferences, he got letters, lots of letters, and people coming up to him, women just like me that had weird stuff like that. I don't know what it means, but my whole story is crazy and squirrely, and my whole life is weird, and I'm kind of weird, and it's changed me a whole lot from the time that it happened, and I thought I was going crazy, and all the weird stuff that's happened to me since then is probably enough to fill 3 books, 4 books, but at the end of the day, I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm okay, I'm better than I've ever been. I'm healthier than I've ever been. So, I'm thankful to be here.
Can I interrupt for